Welcome to Adventures with Nimi. This is my first video. I'm super excited to get this off the ground. Um, let's see. So, if you didn't know, my name is Nehemiah, but my friends call me Nimi. And you can call me Nimi because you are now my friends if you're watching this. Um, Something that might be kind of relevant about me, I recently graduated from undergrad with a degree in psychology, and I absolutely love psychology and philosophy a bit. And so, even when I'm working, I like to use all of my free time to continue learning about psychology and philosophy. And so, my general idea with this channel is that I will just be sharing what I'm learning about life. A lot of it will be psychology and philosophy related, but a lot of it will also just be practically related because I'm a human being trying to figure out how to live life in this very complex world we live in with climate change and political parties and all sorts of injustices that we all want to be a part of and help solve. But then we also have our daily lives and like what should we eat and can we buy groceries at stores that have questionable ethics or use plastic bags? It's just also complicated. So I'm trying to figure that out. Presumably other people are, and I just kind of want to share my journey. So thanks for joining me on this adventure, friends, and let's get into it. So this is a segment where I describe something I recently learned. Technically I didn't learn this last week. I learned it a few weeks ago, but it's a very important thing that I learned, so I want to share it. The thing that I learned is I kind of, in some sense, kind of stumbled upon this realization of how I can motivate myself to basically do anything in the moment. And I'll describe it a little bit more, but first, a little background. So, with regards to me, something I've always been super self-conscious of is that I shy away from doing things that are psychologically uncomfortable. It's weird because on one side of me, I have a pretty high tolerance for mild physical uncomfortability. So like the temperature of the room doesn't generally bother me too much. A lot of times I won't even notice that it's off unless somebody says something. They'll be like, man, it's so hot in here. And I'll be like, yeah, actually it is kind of warm. Or like regularly, just for fun, I will eat foods that I don't like with the intention of making myself like them. Just because, I don't know, I like to do that. But when it comes to things that are like really psychologically uncomfortable, where I have to think really, really hard about something, or I have to use willpower to like push myself to do something, historically for most of my life, I've always really shied away from those kinds of things. And one of my most prominent examples of that for myself has always been my sophomore year in high school when I was in track. And I had a really hard time with the team because most of the kids on the team took being in track very seriously, and four of them ended up breaking the state record for a relay that year, and they had to work really hard to get there. And I was on the track team, and like I just wanted to kind of have fun running around. I wasn't particularly interested in pushing myself, and to me that was always kind of like this representation of how I like to do things for fun, as long as they're like, you know, it's a little physically uncomfortable to like run around or be up and moving and being active, but I kind of like being active until it gets to the point where like suddenly this is really hard and my mind is telling me to stop because there's pain involved, and then I want to stop, and pushing myself past that psychologically, I've always shied away from that. So in recent years, I have attempted to try to like get myself to do more complex things by having people to work with or by having coaches. I've spent quite a bit of money this last year paying people to like sit down with me and try to help coach me into doing things because I've had this idea in my head that it's a lot it's true. It's a lot psychologically easier to do something when someone else is doing it with you, because it actually kind of alleviates a lot of the pressure, because if there's a greater external force of something like a person, then the actual psychologically uncomfortability is a lot lower. So I've basically come up, coaches was one, but there are like so many strategies I've used in my life to try to reduce the psychological uncomfortability of certain situations as a strategy for moving myself forward to accomplish things, because I'm a fairly ambitious person. But it's extremely limiting because there's only so much control you have over the external environment. And so then this last year in the spring, I read this book called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, which I actually have on the shelf right here. And he was kind of suggesting this idea of like pushing yourself to your fullest capacity, pushing yourself to your limit. And the book was very inspiring to me, but I still like didn't quite believe it, that it was possible for somebody to really push themselves all on their own, because I feel like there's so many factors that come into it. And that some things are just really hard and complicated. And I'm always thinking about behavior in terms of like psychology, so I'm always thinking of it from like third person perspective, where it's like, if you have an employee and you want them to do something, then you want to remove as many obstacles as possible because you're trying to maximize the chance that they'll do the job correctly and efficiently. But I think that when it comes to like yourself, you can't think like that. It's not very effective, because you'll just, like me, get caught up in this game of thinking about all these external factors that need to be changed so that you can do what you want, rather than in your mind telling yourself that you want it and you're going to do whatever it takes, and to just like push yourself. And when it gets really uncomfortable, you care more about getting to the end than you do about not being uncomfortable on the way there. So the recent breakthrough I kind of had within my mind with regards to how I could get myself to this place Goggins was almost kind of talking about, where you motivate yourself rather than having an external thing, was I had hired a coach on Fiverr actually, and in one of our sessions, she suggested this idea. She was like, what if you did it because it was hard? And as soon as she said that, like, my entire mindset changed to a degree. Or like, I had this new tool for thinking about things that I'd never considered before, that seemed to actually work. And the reason that it works is because I personally really enjoy challenges. I'm very positively motivated. If I'm doing something because I'm excited about it, then I can really get myself to do almost anything. I'm not very competitive. And in fact, if I'm being pitted against somebody else, I will almost always immediately stop, because I don't like my value being based on whether I can beat somebody else or not, which is how competition a lot of times is set up. But when it comes to like just me seeing if I can do something, or especially if it's like somebody said that you can't do it, then like I'll do it just because they're like, oh, I bet you wouldn't. Doing things as crazy as like eating spiders, just to be like, you know, people are like, oh, that's so gross. And then I'm like, oh, you don't think I'll do it? And then I do it because, like, I don't know, it's fun to me to do that. So I realized that in my everyday life, when I encounter something, I can see it as a challenge rather than as an obstacle. So rather than seeing it as this unfortunate thing that I have to get by in order to get where I'm going, if I think of it instead as an opportunity along the way to where I'm going to develop my character and to engage in challenging myself to do a hard thing, my mind and my energy is like so much different in approaching that task. And I think a huge part is that I have a really bad problem with reactance, which is kind of like the inverse of this, where like on one side, if somebody's like, I bet you can't do it, reactance is like, well, I'm going to do it. So going the other way, if I'm telling myself that I have to do it, then reactance is the other part of my brain being like, oh no, I don't have to do it. And in that situation, the more I try to push myself to do something because I should or because I have to, as opposed to because I've decided that I'm going to, the more I push myself, the more I wear down my own like will and determination, and then usually I'll end up giving in. It's just a matter of how long it takes before I get there. So This is a very powerful new tool that I have learned that is slowly, hopefully, transforming the way that I approach facing complex tasks and difficult things in my life. So I just have to think of it in terms of like, rather than my old way of thinking where I encounter a tough situation and I'm like, oh, I can't do this. This is going to be too hard. Why even try? Which is how I normally react, because in most times in the past, no matter how much I try to will myself to do something, eventually I end up giving up. It's just a matter of time. So this time, I have this new attitude, and I'm like, yes, I'm excited. I have this challenge to face. The hard thing is that I don't know how long-term this really will or won't work. I learned this a few weeks ago, and like it was really working strong for a few days, as it normally does, and then a few days later, it kind of just died out, and I've been kind of back to my normal self. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that changing patterns and habits in life for a human being is generally extremely difficult and takes a lot of focused attention and concentration. And I think that I just need to give myself a lot more time, and I really need to commit to practicing this attitude of seeing hard things as something to get excited about rather than as something that's annoying and an inconvenience. But it's so hard to teach myself to think that way when for my entire life up to this point I've always shied away from hard challenges and seen them as a negative, bad thing rather than something to get excited about. So that's kind of a thing that I'm going to have to still work through, and in future videos, especially as I talk about my goals, which I'm going to get to toward the end, I'll be kind of outlining like how much are these things that I'm learning really helping? Are they staying around, or are they changing, or I guess we'll see. One of the other things that I was wondering around this is how much this may or may not be true for other people. I don't know if this is just a me thing, that I'm very positively motivated, and when something is negatively framed, I tend to become discouraged and give up. So like in Goggins' book, his attitude is a little bit more around this idea of he cared a lot about who he was as a person, and he would challenge himself to prove to himself that he was a person. And I kind of understand that sentiment a little bit, but it's not really the way that I'm strongly motivated. Especially once I became self-confident, then I was just kind of like, I like who I am, I'm good enough, my value is not determined by other people's opinions, and then suddenly if somebody thinks I'm stupid for not doing something, or if somebody thinks I'm stupid for any reason, like I don't care, it doesn't motivate me because I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone. I just am who I am, and that's why I don't like competition, because I don't need to prove myself by doing something. I don't look at myself in the mirror and feel ashamed because I'm not more of a man or something. I just care about being excited about things. I'm very optimistic, so when I can frame something as getting excited about a challenge, that's completely different than you're gonna do this because you're gonna prove that you're a hardworking person. It's I can't go off of that. Not to I don't have any issues with Goggins. I mean, this is honestly my question. I think that some people are just motivated different, and I think what he has written is very powerful, and I think it's more true for some people than others, and it was just less true for me. So he got me most of the way there, and then my coach that I was talking to, who kind of framed it that different way, is kind of what took me the rest of the way. But Goggins at least got me to believe that anything is really possible if you push yourself to it. It's just a matter of figuring out how you need to think about it to get yourself to do it without battling your mind so much. And then the last question is really just what are the practical limits, because I feel like at some point we have a limited energy, so you can't just push yourself to do everything as a challenge constantly. I feel like at a certain level you have to prioritize things and push yourself to do the challenges that are most important and pressing in your life, not just do whatever happens to come your way. I think you have to strategize a little bit. And for me, finding the balance is really hard because I always tend toward the strategizing to get out of the hard situation. So I need to strategize in order to do the right hard situations. and avoid the wrong ones rather than strategizing to avoid all of them, which I think has been my tendency for most of my life. So yeah, that's something I learned. Those are the questions that I have, and we'll see where it goes from here, and whether my mind changes about this as time goes on, or if it sticks around for a long time. Time will only tell. Alright, so this is going to be the segment of my videos where I talk about my goals. So I wanted to use making videos and what I'm learning to also be paired with the goals that I'm setting for myself, because a lot of what I'm learning is going to be directly correlated to my personal goals with regards to my lifestyle and just things that I want to develop in terms of skills and stuff. And for the time being, one of my biggest emphasis areas of my life has been my lifestyle. I think that if I'm not taking care of my brain, then it kind of undermines my ability to do anything else. So I'm trying to push myself to sleep better in terms of like having healthy sleep habits, healthy eating habits, exercising regularly, taking care of my teeth, just really simple things. So for October, I think I'm going to stick with this system of just doing 5 goals a month so I don't overwhelm myself trying to change too many things at a time. So for October, these are my 5 goals. I'm going to push myself to always be on time to anything that I commit myself to. I'm going to push myself to always be in bed on time, which I'm changing jobs right now, so that's a little bit in flux, but day to day I know what time I need to be going to bed, so I'm going to hold myself to that. I want to challenge myself to write down at the end of every day one challenge I faced that day, and if I didn't, then before going to bed I need to invent one, like taking a cold shower, which is kind of a hard psychological thing for me to get myself to do. I want to do meditation every morning, because every time I do, goodness, it changes my day. Like, it calms me so much to like go into the day so relaxed. And like when I don't, then I go into the day so much more like chaotic and jittery. So I want to be doing meditation every morning. I've been using a guided meditation since I'm somewhat new to it. And then the other thing is I want to be making these videos regularly. So I've gotten it down to where I can do them pretty fast. So I want to be making one every week. I should have more than enough time to do this once a week. So those are my 5 goals. The next video that I make, I will have a chart where I'll have kept track of how consistently I've been keeping with my goals, and I might talk a little bit about what's been working, what hasn't been working, and what I might change. But yeah, so these are my goals. This is the journey I'm on. Thank you again for joining me. Literally anybody who's going to join me on this journey, like, I consider you a friend. We're all just human beings trying to figure out this complicated life, and hopefully my journey is helpful to you, and I'll be super looking forward to comments even, because I feel like people might have great ideas to like post in the comments about videos I might watch that are helping me with the goals I'm trying to do, or that are similar to what I'm learning. And yeah, so I'm excited to have a more interactive kind of YouTube channel where I'm growing with other people, and it's not just me about saying something, because goodness knows I have so much to learn about life. Any opinion I have right now I hold so loosely. So yeah, I'll catch you next week. Something I am planning on adding to the end of every video is I'm going to do like a small thing that has to do with my roommate Benji, because we're constantly giving each other a hard time. So last night, yesterday he took the light bulb out of the living room to use it over here at his desk. She has here. He put in this new lamp, and specifically he took this light bulb out of the living room, which I was using for reading at night. And last night I went into his room and I was like, "Hey Benji, I don't have a light bulb to read with." To which he replied, he just looked at me and he was like, "Well, it's my light bulb, my lamp, so I don't care." And I was just like, wow, jerk. So then we like started taking light bulbs from all over the house and stealing them from each other. He literally just like walked in my room in front of me while I was reading on the couch and took a light bulb out of my room. So anyway, however it goes. Then he ended up taking this light bulb. So I'm going to put this light bulb up here in this lamp and see how long it takes him to figure out where his light bulb went. Or he'll end up watching this video, and then he'll know what happened to it. But his light bulb is now up here. Anyway, that's all. Okay, bye.